What's up, my friend? Welcome to the Finding Direction podcast. My name is Stu Massengill, and I'm here every single week to bring you a passionate guest or message dedicated to helping you find your purpose so that you can live a life full of passion, fulfillment, and happiness. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for hanging out with me, and let's dive in. How's it going, my friend? Welcome back to Finding Direction. This week, I'm sitting down with Adam Duran, and a little bit about Adam. He is a marathon runner who's ran over 75 marathons at the age of 56 years old. He is the author of a book called Live Life on Purpose, and he's also a former professional in the law enforcement world. He served about 30 years in the law enforcement space, and on this episode, a few things we talk about is going from the wrong side of the track where he grew up to creating a life on purpose. We also talk about how you are a slave to your habits and how to become a slave to the correct habits and creating a never give up mentality. These are a few of the things we dive into as we navigate through Adam's story. I am certain you're going to take a few nuggets from this that you can apply to your life instantly. So we're going to dive into this in just a moment. If you have not yet, please make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can join us every single week on the podcast as we bring you incredible content. And if you're enjoying the show, please take a second and leave us a review. I would be extremely, extremely grateful. All right, my friend, without further ado, here we go. Adam Duran, welcome to the podcast, man. I am pumped to have our conversation today.
Hey, thank you for having me. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to serve you and your audiences. I'm pumped. I'm stoked.
Let's go.
To talk to you and see what you've done. I just found it's just an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And even before we started recording, and people will feel this as we go throughout the episode today, but you have this unbelievable energy. It's almost contagious. And I want to dive through your story. I want to, have you expand a little bit more upon who you are for our audience. But one thing I would actually love to start with a little differently is, can you share with our listener, what are some of the things you do to have this contagious energy that you have? I mean, it's not just here. I've looked you up, looked at other things, and it's like you always have this sort of energy about you that is like anybody I think would want to grab that energy and put it in their pocket so they could have that be part of their life. So I'm curious, like, what are some of the things you do in your life to have this just unbelievable energy? I mean, obviously, and we'll get into this, you run marathons, more than a couple. So what are some of the things you do to have this high level of energy?
Well, I think, to be honest, we think some of this is kind of natural, my personality, my character. So I'm 56 years young. I feel like 26, and that's not hyperbole. So with this kind of energy at this age, at this stage in the game, I have to thank God for my mom and love her, because if she had to deal with me growing up, my mom is a rock star. She's a saint.
She was a saint.
Yes. So growing up, I've always had this energy, and at times it was misguided. I misguided my energy. And so what I looked at in my life as a detriment was really my superpower. And as I got older, I was able to grab that energy and focus it with some clarity. And then the goal started accomplishing. So one of the things I actually do is I run. There's a lot of different things that I do, but running is a big part of my life. I've been doing it for 32 years now. So I think health, I'm a guy who subscribes to the notion, if you're not feeling your best, you could never give your best and never be your best. So you have to actually be intentional about how you feel. And it starts really with a mindset, a philosophical approach to life, more than just the body, but then it comes out with the body. So you have to be intentional. Eating right, hydration, physical exercise, that vitamin D in the daytime. So these are the things I do and have done and do it. I work out just about every day. I have 5 days a week, and a couple of days off I take off to rest.
Yeah.
But even in those days, I'm doing something, just not actually actively running.
Love it. Heck yeah. Okay, cool. And I love how you said at one point too that eventually you found a way to channel that energy, right, into something that was really important, right? Maybe even your purpose. And I think that's the magic spot we all want to get to, right? Where it's like we have this maximum energy, we've learned to channel into our purpose. And I'm sure we'll pick more of that apart throughout today's episode. But what I would love to do now is, let's go a little bit backwards. And if you could tell us, just first and foremost, as you kind of went into the real world and started taking your first steps into your life, your purpose, what did some of those first initial steps look like?
So as an adult or growing up?
Yeah. So as an adult, like as you were maybe young, older teens, young mid-20s, what did that chapter sort of look like? I know obviously eventually you got into law enforcement, you spent a large portion there. So maybe even if you want to share with us, like how did you and why did you first even take that first step?
So I kind of just a really real quick recap on my growing up. I kind of grew up in the proverbial other side of the tracks, the wrong side of the tracks. So I always kind of felt within me, maybe some people felt that way about me, but it was more internal. It was a story I told myself because I was from the wrong side of the tracks. Then I had to act out in that way. So growing up, I was a high school dropout. And actually, I was on juvenile pro, had an epiphany, had a religious experience, became Christian, and it was not only about me. And from there, I began to feel like, hey, maybe I am of value. Maybe I can contribute. Maybe I'm more than what I feel about myself. If nothing else, how people feel about me, but it's more in how I feel. So I ended up going to school, college, leaving town. Even though I didn't graduate, I was able to get in college, went to Louisiana. From there, got to be around other people. And the other people that was around were people that were wanting to be accomplished. They were goal setters. And I know, like you've mentioned, proximity is so valuable.
Yeah.
And who I was around had high expectations for not only themselves, but who they were going to be around as well. So I needed to raise my standards if I was going to be around certain people. Now that I was around certain people, I began to find out what they were doing, and they were actually planning for their future and planning to be in intentionality to meet goals. Then I started to do that. That was a transformation in my life.
Interesting. So
and then from there, I came back after several years being away, Louisiana, Illinois, came back, and again, there we go. I started to. I'm planning now, where I was kind of living off the seat of my pants, haphazardly letting life happen to me instead of me happening to life. And then, but again, I saw other people, how they were doing it. I started to incorporate that type of mentality and philosophical approach to life, how you have to be intentional about meeting goals. Not just like, I want to meet a goal without a plan. Well, it's just a fairy tale. It's a wish. It's never going to happen. So I started to do that. Things started to change for me. Then I ended up getting law enforcement, which I didn't think I could ever get because I was on juvenile probation.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, I got in. I took the shot like Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey great. I think he said, you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I took the shot. And lo and behold, I got in. That changed my life. That discipline, lifestyle of law enforcement, paramilitary, changed everything. Then I started to discipline, again, proximity, who I'm around, the discipline lifestyle. Then my whole life started to get disciplined. And that's what changed everything and the trajectory of my life.
Interesting. And one thing that's so, it almost sounds like there's a formula that you've applied to continue to sort of elevate in your life. And one thing that's, I think, really interesting that you said here is, one, just the idea of, you said, I got into college and I didn't finish high school. Like, for many people, I think it's like, oh, well, I haven't done this, so I can't do that thing, right? And one, you defied it by saying, maybe I didn't finish high school, but I'm still going to go to college. And you were resourceful. You found a way to do it. Then when it comes to law enforcement, you go, well, maybe I can't do this. I have this juvenile record, maybe. But again, you sort of defied the odds and said, I'm going to find a way anyway. So I'm curious, like, what did that process sort of look like, if you could break it down in a like step-by-step way someone listening to this right now could take, as far as if someone listening to this, they're going, okay, I have this thing that I want to achieve, but maybe I don't have the record to show that I should be able to get there, and it's kind of one of those things like you did, where it maybe on paper, quote unquote, doesn't make sense, but clearly in your own life, you found a way time and time again. So how can our listener maybe do that in their own life?
I think a couple things. One, don't ever tell yourself no, because again, the past you can either use the past, your past, our past, as an anchor, but or as fuel. So
Yeah.
I went for it and I started to use it as fuel. Like, yeah, I may have not been from the best side of town, but therein, the story I told myself, I flipped it and said, that's my superpower, because I wasn't given everything. And so at that point, I felt like, hey, I got nothing to lose, because most people don't figure I'm going to make it anyways. So, hey, why let that define me? You know what? Since they don't think, and they don't have high expectations of me, I'm going to have high expectations of myself, and just go for it. Go for the shot. Because guess what? They expect me to lose. So I had nothing to lose by trying different things. And that began to build a pattern in my life that even though, and sometimes the plan, a lot of people, they plan, and on the other side, they plan, and they don't end up doing anything. They overanalyze. We're not going to have it all figured out. We never will, because the uncomfortability factor in the growth, how we grow as people, we have to get better, more comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's where growth happens.
Yeah.
And so I have nothing to lose, so I'm going to go for it. So that pattern followed me. I said, you know what? I'm going to go to college. Okay. I got in. Wow. And I'm going to go for the law enforcement. Wow. I actually got in.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, hey, let's just keep this thing going.
Reinforcing it.
Let's reinforce it. And of course, I had several promotions, a couple of promotions in law enforcement as well. And so I'm very thankful for that. But I went for it. And, I have a whole story about my marathon and my failures, but I said, I'm going to go for it again. It was a pattern in my life. And those failures is when I learned and grew the most. So you have never shoot yourself in the foot and tell yourself no. You go for it.
Yeah. Amazing.
And have no fear.
Yeah. And I think for anyone listening to this right now, a powerful question that they can ask themselves is, like, what are you waiting to go for? Like, what's that thing, like you're talking about, that's the thing that maybe doesn't make sense, or you're not quite sure if you're qualified, or it makes you feel uncomfortable to think about taking that step? What's an area of your life that you could take this pattern that you've used in your life and proven that is a pattern that works, of saying, I'm going to take a shot. I'm just going to go for it. I'm not going to be ready. I'm not going to be fully prepared, but I'm just going to go for it. And if I do that, I have a better chance than Wayne Gretzky said, not taking the shot and obviously not getting there. So for the person listening to this right now, I really do want you to think about, where do you need to take that shot in your life? And then take it, right? Because if you don't take it, nothing's going to happen. So if we go back in your life, you're in law enforcement, you're growing there, you're progressing, you've continued to reinforce this pattern in your life. And at what point do, like you spoke about, all of a sudden, hey, I'm gonna start running marathons? Like, when does that become part of your life? Because for our listener who's getting to know you, what they may not know right away is that you've run over 75 marathons. So that's a massive accomplishment. So at what point did you, like, where did this all start, I guess?
So the running started when I did not want to, it's not sometimes it's a weird thing for me. And I want to succeed when I go for something, but almost more than I want to succeed, I don't want to fail. So I work doubly hard not to fail, which drives me to succeed, because I'm not going to fail. And if I do, I'm giving it all I got. So when I got into law enforcement, initially, I knew that they have like a boot camp. They have, you got to work out, you got to run, you got to do push-ups and all those kind of things. You got to be in shape. So 2 years after, when I first applied, it took me 2 years to get the job because there was a hiring freeze. And, I just said, you got to stay with it, though.
Yeah.
You have to stay. If you want it bad enough, you'll find a way. Yeah. But if you don't, you'll find an excuse. So even though they had a hiring freeze, this is way back in way back when I started to work out, and I said eventually they're going to hire me, and I started to work out. I started to run. 1990, by the way. It took 2 years before the hiring freeze lifted in my county, and they started hiring again. And I wasn't even sure I was going to get it because it'd been 2 years. But what I wasn't going to do is stop, because I was going to be prepared. And when it wasn't a matter of if, it's when I get into that academy, I will not fail. I will succeed, or I'm going to die trying. I'm going to burn my boats. And when you burn your boat, you tend to succeed. So I've never been in something like that before. I started to run, started to work out. 2 years of running before I was able to get into the academy. That's where that started. Over time, it became more than running to me. It was a mindset. It really helped me to focus even more so. When you're running, you're running. So you're running for hours sometimes. And then all of a sudden, that follows you in your life with clarity. You're able to chunk things down. You're able to think more clearly. And next thing you know it, you're doing one thing, then you do another thing. It's like James Clear in Atomic Habits, habit stacking. I get this, then I get this, then I get that. And pretty soon you know it compounding over time, you are going to be crushing your goals. Stay with it though, because most people quit when it gets hard. But when it gets hard, that's the growth pattern. That's when you start to grow. If you're a weightlifter and you want to get stronger, you need to add more weight. You need more resistance. And all of a sudden, you start tearing the muscles up, they start building them up. That's kind of a metaphor for life. And that's how the marathon started over years. I never thought I could do a marathon, by the way, because I was literally, when I started in 1990, don't want to get into the weeds here, I can hardly run around the block, and I was 24 years old. I was winded at 24. I'm like, this is not good. It was embarrassing, actually. But over time, from one block turned into 26 miles, so
multiple times.
Yeah, about 75. I say 50 to 100. I don't keep track. So I'll say 75. I knew it wasn't over 100, and I know it's way over 50. So 75 marathons.
Love it.
Which includes 4 Boston Marathon qualifying times.
Damn. Beautiful. So one thing that I've heard in your story time and time and time again, and I think this is such a powerful thing to pull out of your story. And it's interesting. I was just listening to a book, I don't know, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. It's called The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. Great book. It's like 75 pages, real short read.
Read it.
And one of the scrolls that they go through in the book, they go through these different scrolls. One of them was, I will become a slave to my habits, and I will become a slave to good habits. And I think what you can see in your life is you've found ways to say, what is this pattern that I need to have in my life? What's this habit that I need to have in my life? And you've become a slave to that habit. You become committed, so disciplined to it. And by default, it's created some incredible things in your life. So I think, again, a really interesting thing to talk to the listener again is asking themselves, what habits in your life are you a slave to right now? Right? Are you a slave to the habit that is keeping you in depression? Are you a slave to the habit that's keeping you in a career that you don't love? Are you a slave to a habit that's not producing the fruits that you want in your life? And what would be the new habits that you need to become a slave of, right? Would they be the ones like yourself of having the habit of saying, I'm going to take my shot. I'm going to do it whether I succeed or not, right? What type of habits do you need to put into your life and say, I'm going to become a slave to it? And if you do it, those habits create ultimately the life that you really want. So I think it's so amazing to see that in your life, like you are a living proof of this. And it's so powerful, and it's created some incredible things in your life. And so if we chug and keep going down the journey of your life, you're running all these marathons, you're qualifying for the Boston Marathon, you're doing all these incredible things. And at what point does all of a sudden becoming an author come into your life? Because again, you're the story of, again, grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, but continuously, and I love this mentality you've had. It's like, I'm not going to quit. Like, I will die trying. And that's such a beautiful thing. So maybe 2 questions I have here, actually. One is, how does somebody develop a mentality like that? Like, you have this killer mentality that's also really beautiful, right? It's not like you're out with malice and trying to like do bad. Like, you have this vicious mentality that is viciously beautiful. So like, How does someone develop that? And then I would be curious also how writing the book came into your life.
So yes, one of the ways I've developed this, and it's like we talked about, it was the little things. So like what Jim Rohn said, it's the little things,
Yeah.
the things that can propel you forward. They're small in nature, but it's habitual, right? But they're so small and easy to do. They're also easy not to do. And
Yeah.
the self-awareness, because we all 100% of us have habits. But the question, like you said, is what are your habits getting you? Where have your habits gotten you? And you got positive or negative habits that are either propelling you or holding you back. And the self-awareness to really sit down for a minute, just sit down for a minute and think about my habits. And are they helping me, holding me back, or hurting me? Once you could sit there and be self-aware of that, and then take action. Again, you don't have to have the whole plan. Just take action. You'll never run 26 miles without first taking the first step or running the first mile. But it takes time. It takes time to get this. Now, over time, the marathon started to come into place because as I ran 3 miles or mile, then I said, maybe I can run 2. You know what? Maybe 3. You know what? Maybe I can do 5 miles. And then maybe I can do that 2 or 3 days a week. And then eventually, maybe one day I can run 10 miles. The marathon wasn't even there. I'm thinking, maybe I can run 10. Wow, 10. I don't even know anybody.
That'd be crazy.
Because I didn't know anybody who was running. It was only me. Like I had no friends because I'm just becoming a runner. And then I started buying magazines, Runner's World, different things like that, and kind of studying it a little bit. Then 10 miles. Then I said, you know what? Maybe one day I can run a half marathon, 13 miles, 13.1. And then eventually, there we go. These are all these habits and the mentality of what can I do next? How can I challenge myself? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. All of a sudden, I run 5. I didn't die. Maybe I can run 6, maybe 10, maybe 13. Then at 13, I thought, man, can you imagine running a marathon? I couldn't even imagine that, but maybe I can do this. Then eventually, I tried. I felt like I was going to die, but I actually did the marathon. And that's all documented in my book, Live Life on Purpose, which was really a metaphor for life, like setting the goal to finish the marathon, right? 26 miles, 26.2. But that's great. But even almost more than that, it's what you become. In the training that it takes and to achieve that goal, what you become. That's the big question. And whatever you're doing in life, what are you becoming as you pursue that goal? So eventually I got 1 marathon, 2 marathons. And then I said, the illustrious Boston Marathon, the oldest and most prestigious marathon in the world. I think it's from 1896 or something like that.
Right.
And when I would sit down at marathon tables and I'd find out, didn't even know the person. These are like they call it the carbo load a day before the marathon. Most marathons have them. So I'd go to those and sit down at a table and somebody would, hey, that person over there ran the Boston Marathon. I said, who? Who? They did. It was like a movie star to me that they just ran the Boston Marathon, whenever that was. And so I wanted to talk to him. Hey, you ran the Boston Marathon? I'm not kidding you. I was like a fan. They were like a star to me. And then I thought over maybe a couple more years, and I thought, maybe I can run the Boston. So you have to qualify at another marathon at a certain speed to be able to qualify. And then they have to vet you and accept that you have to be, the Boston Athletic Association has to have that marathon sanctioned and your time, and they have to vet you before they invite you. So that's what that's what Boston Marathon. So I said, maybe so that was over time, 4 or 5 marathons failures it was all documented, all the failures. But that last time before I qualified for the Boston Marathon, and I did it 4 times in succession after that, every time I tried, I qualified and been invited. That last time, I think it was 5 marathons in, that I was going, I said, I cannot fail this one. And each marathon cycle is about 4 to 6 months for me. So I have to train and then fail, train, then fail, train. It takes years. And finally I said, you know what? I remember saying this, I'm going to qualify today or I'm going to die trying. And if I cross that finish line today and I qualify and I died right after, I'm going to die a happy man. But my boats will be burned today. And I succeeded. And that's that mentality. Like, okay, what can I do next? Because this didn't kill me. It just made me stronger. And then it made me see higher. How high can I get now? And now I feel like, even though some things do scare me, but I'm not too scared to try. And the fear of criticism, the fear of failure, it is what it is. If the people talk about you, those people are talking about you whether you do good or not. So don't let that stop you. You just got to give it your best shot, be intentional, have a plan in action, even if you don't have it all figured out. Chunk it down and you go for it. And that's how. And then it got me to the promotions at my work. I'll just try 30 years in law enforcement. I retired as a lieutenant watch commander. I had about 170, 180 people that reported to me. And this is the guy who just was thankful just to get in, didn't think he would ever get in law enforcement. So I got in, did just shy of 30 years, maximized my retirement last year. But I started thinking, okay, what's next? Okay, I did 30 years. I promoted again. I did all these cool things at work. Well, what next? I'm not going to sit down. I'm not going home to sit down at 55 years old and watch TV and binge watch. No, I want to be able to contribute. And I worked in the custody division, so I've seen people at their worst, making the worst decisions, doing horrific crimes. From an inside personal perspective, I've seen some, you name it. You name it. We have a big facility.
Not good stuff.
Not good stuff. So I said, I'm going to reach out to them and everyone else who feels stuck in their life. I'm gonna get it in such a way that it's going to be practical, it's going to be valuable, and I'm going to contribute all my experience and knowledge of what I've learned. And I love reading books, by the way. I read books 7 days a week. I read every day. And I said, all that information, I have encyclopedias. Now it's time to give back to the community. So a month before I retired, July 2021, a month prior, I Googled, how do I write a book? Because I said, this is, I can get into the custody environment. I can get into the schools. I can get into the libraries, and I can get into the masses, this information, because it needs to get out there. And I'm going to do my part to get it out there. I'm healthy, I'm energetic, and I'm passionate about helping to change lives for the better, that they can level up their life for themselves, their families, and their future. And I'm going to do everything I can to get that message out there. So a month prior, started writing the book, got it done 1 year after that, July 2022. June 2021, I started. I retired in July, got it done in 1 year, June 2022. And I've been on a tear since then, just getting that information out there and being very thankful. And here's a guy who didn't graduate high school. I never read a book before I went to college, not one book. And here I'm writing books now. Intentionality.
And an amazing mentality you have. You have such just a fascinating mindset in a really good way. And another thing that I've noticed that is part of this mentality that you have of just like this viciously beautiful mentality, I guess we'll call it, is asking yourself, what can I do next? And I think that's such a superpower, because sometimes I think what can happen in life is we can look a year in the future, we can look 5 years in the future, and all of a sudden we go, oh, there's so many things that I'm gonna have to do to get there, and it becomes overwhelming. Versus if we can just ask ourselves, what can I do next? And we just focus on what can I do next? And we do that. And then we go, what can I do next? And we do that. And we go, what can I do next? It's like eventually we're going to create that thing that's in a year, in 5 years, but we did it by just continuously asking ourselves, what's next? What's next? What's next? It's such a freeing mentality to have. And I just think it's beautiful. And again, for our listener, ask yourself the question, what's next, right? What could you do that's next to get you in the right direction? Not what you need to do in a year, 5 years, 10 years, so on and so forth, but what can you do next, right? And so you get the book, you've written it within a year, which is, I love that. Now it's out. Clearly you're on a tear and you can feel it from your energy. And, the book is all about living in your purpose, right? Living your life on purpose. And so I'm curious, for someone listening to this, what would be, I don't know, maybe a piece of advice or two you could give them on How do you live a life on purpose?
What I would say, just in a real practical way, this is very practical because it was like, oh, get a mentor, do this, do that, and those are all true. But sometimes people are like, well, what's a mentor? I don't. I mean, a mentor. I mean, I had a mom and dad, or I didn't have mom and dad, and I don't know what that means. Or get a coach. Well, what's a coach? I mean, they know, but they don't know. Here's how you can. Here's a really simple way to this purpose thing. Well, we all know we have to feed our families and we have to live life. But if you're working full time and you feel like you're kind of not on your game, you're not on your purpose, okay, start to do it part time. You can still work full time and find that purpose. Okay, well, how do you find it? Well, one simple way, and there may probably some other ways as well, is find out what your interests are. What do you like to do? And there's a couple things. Find out what you like to do, and then find out what you're good at. Because sometimes the things you're good at, you don't like to do. And sometimes the things you like to do, you may not be good at. So the perfect sauce would be find out what you like to do and what you're good at. And if you have enough passion of what you like to do, you're going to eventually get good at it. And then if you can marry the two and start to do it part-time, like say, well, I work in law enforcement, but I like real estate, or I like helping people. Well, do it part-time until you can either make it, because when you're passionate about something, you're going to put in the extra work that the other person's not putting in. And you're going to get better at it. Why? Because you're spending the time doing it. Where I'm putting an hour, you may be putting 2 hours, or I'm putting 2, you putting 4. So eventually compounding over time, the law of averages, you're going to get better at than me. All of a sudden, you're enjoying it, you're liking what you do, and then you can maybe monetize it. And maybe start to move that full time. So find out what you like to. What are your interests? Like some people are like, I always wanted to be a gamer, and I like computers. Well, that's great. That's great. I mean, I don't know anything about that, but that's great. That's great for you. Start to move in that direction because you like it, and then find out other people that are doing it. Proximity, and then are they monetizing it, or are you able to, or do you want to? Find out what you're good at, and find out what your interests are, what you like to do, what you would do for free. If no one paid you, what would you actually do? If you were financially independent, like right now, you didn't need another dollar, what would you actually like to do? And they said, well, again, sitting on the beach drinking a Mai Tai, it's not, for the rest of your life, is not a good strategy. It's not. It's not. So that's a diminishing return. So, but you're financially independent. You don't need another dollar. What would you like to do if money wasn't an issue? Well, that could be, well, obviously you like to do it. That might be your purpose. That might be like, I like volunteering in church. Well, great, because you find so much value in it. Because it's not beyond money. Everybody like, hey, give me more money. That's great. I like what Jim Rohn says. He says, I'll take the money. Don't need the money, but I'll take the money. So it's not about the money. It's about leaving a legacy of contribution. In that, you get fulfillment. Like Tony Robbins says quite often, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And so you get there, but it's anticlimactic. So you want to see something that's working, that actually internally, it makes you feel good because you just helped somebody. And so whatever that is in life, that can lead you to
moving towards it.
Start moving towards it. And you can say purpose. And, this is kind of a cliche. That's the word of the day, purpose. Just find out something you like to do and start to move in that direction. That's just very simple.
Yeah. Easy. Right. And giving yourself a disattachment of saying like, it's got to be perfect. Like just start doing the thing and see where it goes. Right. And you follow that energy.
Take action.
It'll lead you to something. Yeah. Ask, we bring it back, right? Ask what's next. What can you do next to start doing what you just spoke about? Right. So one thing I would love to hear from you is obviously you have a lot that you're doing in life. You got the new book that just came out. I'm curious if people want to hang out with you more, see what you're up to, get a hold of the book. Where's the best place for our listener to find you and continue to hang out?
Okay, so you can get a hold of me. The book's called Live Life on Purpose by me, Adam Duran, and it's on Amazon right now. And you can get a hold of me at Adam Adam at adam-duran.com. So my website is adam-duran.com. From there, you can get a hold of me. The email is adam-duran.com. You can get a hold of me on Instagram at adam._Duran. Adam._Duran. I'm on Instagram. I actually had thousands of people that would follow me, got hacked. So I had to start all over again. But that's okay. That's all part of the process. Sometimes you get a little derailed and a little distracted, but don't let that distract you from you. When you have a strong enough why, you will find a way. These are all the lessons in life, the challenges, and sometimes the failures are there to serve us. Life is happening for us, not to us. Amen. And we learn through all these. And guess what? The challenges of life will always be there. When the baby's born, well, the challenge is getting the baby to breathe. And then maybe holding a bottle one day by themselves. Maybe begin to crawl. Maybe begin to stand up, then walk, then run. Again, there's always another level. And as we grow up, many of us stop growing. As a kid, they go to school, then they have a relationship, and then different things, and they want to go to university. But as we grow up, as adults, now I'm 25, 35, really, I stopped growing. I've met people that are teachers that don't read books, and they teach in schools. They don't read books. They just read the curriculum to teach the kids. And they told me they feel bad that they don't read books. That's unfortunate because they're not growing. They're not growing. You always have to tell you what, progress equals happiness. We need to grow. So with that, I'm sorry, I went on and on. That's how you get a hold of me. I'm sorry. I'm also on Facebook, Adam Duran. You can find me. You can Google my name.
Basically anywhere. Yeah.
You can find me if you Google Adam Duran runner. You'll see me different places. And I would love to communicate with you and add value if I can. And I know I can. When you're looking for a teacher, one appears. Hey, I'm looking for a teacher. Guess what? I met Stu, a coach. And likewise, as Stu and I and others like us, we're out here trying to positively impact the world. And thank you, Stu.
Absolutely. And we'll put that in the show notes too, so it's easy for people to get access and find you. And so the last question I have for you, it's a question we ask all of our guests because we want to help people find direction, but do it through action like we've spoke about a lot today. So my last question for you would be, what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
Wow, great question. In a very practical sense, is just take the first step. Take action. Most people kind of know, but for whatever reason, they're either afraid or they're apprehensive that maybe it won't work out for them. Maybe it's their experience, their upbringing. Maybe were told no all the time, or maybe they've had some major failures, quote unquote failures in their life. Again, use it as fuel, not as an anchor. And if you just take that first step in, read a book. If you say, well, I don't like to read books. Well, there's leaders are readers. And so if it's going to get uncomfortable. And you know what? You have to accept that. Just take the first step, take massive action. Don't wait till tomorrow to do it. Start today. Don't just say, oh, maybe no. First of the year, New Year's resolution. No, do it today. When you hear this podcast and say, Adam and Stu told me to start today, and I'm going to start that fitness routine today. I'm going to start to lose the weight. I'm going to start to eat better today. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait for the weekend. Don't wait till after Christmas. Start today. Take massive action. If you do that today, your life will change. You upgrade your story. You upgrade your life.
Let's go. All right. On that, we are out. Adam, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much to you and your audience.
Absolutely.